It's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com today for more info, or you can always email me directly through Benji at alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Marilynne Harrison. We're going to be discussing her wonderful memoir, Recovery Happens Through Christ. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com, pretty much every online book reseller. You're going to want to head on over there and pick up your copies, and I'm going to tell you why you need to do that in just a moment. Before we go any further, though, I want to take this opportunity and point out that Marilynne was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people, if you follow us, well, you already know I'm talking about CITI of Books. So for my writers out there listening in, listen to me and listen to me well. If you have completed your masterpiece, you have gone through your process, spending some sleepless nights at times doing that, and now you need help moving the book you just developed. Well, if that's you, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give and contact CITI of Books. I'm telling you, they're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to cityofbooks.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, I mentioned to you a second ago that Marilynne has a book that you need to add to your shelf. This is something you're going to want to pick up. This is something you're going to want to purchase because it has so much to offer. Now, right there in the title, it's going to give you an idea of what to expect. But I promise you, an idea is all you're receiving today, okay? When you pick up this book, you are in for a journey. It's a memoir. So we know we're going to be traveling alongside Marilynne through her life and obstacles that she has faced. But right there, as it states in the title, recovery happens through Christ. I love that line because it gives you a great snapshot into the underlying message and theme of this book. People, you've heard me mention this a number of times in the past. I am a firm believer that God doesn't place anything in your path that you aren't strong enough to overcome. Now, it may not feel like that in the moment. I get it. Sometimes we're going through some of our obstacles. We're going through some of our darkest moments, and it is hard to see that light peering through the cloud. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But with God's assistance, right, with God's help, with His guidance, you're going to be able to conquer any obstacle you face. And this is something that this book stands on and it symbolizes. So keep that in mind as you're reading through the book, as you're traveling and seeing her particular obstacles that she overcame. And listen, it's a constant battle. I mean, life is a constant battle, right? I mean, every day is a new adventure. Sometimes, not always, the greatest adventure. But keep that obstacle in mind. Keep that underlying message in mind as you're reading. And understand that the power of this book lies not in the specific circumstances that she had to overcome. Now, of course, that is very powerful in and of itself. But take the message, read in between the lines, and understand the goal here is to impress upon you all that with God's help, with God by your side, anything is possible. And with that wisdom, with that strength, you're going to be able to move some mountains, people. I'm telling you, at the end of the day, don't take my word for it, right? I can sit here, I can talk to it, I can use every cliche in the book, but Marilynne is the expert. It's her book. She's written it. It's her life. She's lived it. And she's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So as I mentioned to you before, sit back, strap in. Marilynne, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. It was a no-brainer for us. Thank you for writing the book, and thank you even more for being a guest here to discuss it. Let's jump right in. Let's not hold off any longer. Marilynne, your book is called Recovery Happens Through Christ. Tell us a little bit more about the words on those pages.
I tried to do everything my own way. After all the abuse and things that happened in my life, I thought my dreams were shattered and gone. Mm-hmm. I was at an AA meeting after turning my life over to a new, which you'll have to read the book to find out how that happened.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine gave me a cup and said, I think this cup's for you. I put Recovery Happens on it. And I said, oh, wow. I got home and I thought about it, and I had been wanting to write my story because people had asked me when I would go speak places, they would say, have you got a book out? Have you got a book out? And I said, no, I don't. Well, you should have a book out. Mm-hmm. So I sat down that night, and it just kept on getting at me with that cup that she got me that said, Recovery Happens. And God gave me the name of the book, Recovery Happens Through Christ. Mm-hmm. I started writing the story that was my life, that God had taken me through, but at times I didn't think that he was with me because it felt like shattered disaster all over all the time. Yeah. Every time I tried to do well, it was bad. So I thought, wow, God did take me through things. Mm-hmm. And the book tells about those things.
You know, Marilynne, thank you very much for that. And listen, a great segue that you've established, because I was going to hold off a little bit longer, but let's not even do that. Let's jump right into it. You said it yourself. You were in a dark place, and it seemed like that's all you could see. That's all you were experiencing was the negativity, was this vicious cycle, right? This vicious storm. And I think everybody listening in right now can relate to that concept. We all have moments of just absolute turbulence in our lives where it seems like we just cannot catch a break. And there are so many things just compounding on us. Well, I want to go into it, and I want you to be able to pay it forward to our listening audience here, Marilynne. Talk to our listening audience here, people listening in, and for anybody out there that finds themselves in that turbulent situation. And it's almost unfair to ask because, of course, when we look at the spectrum of abuse and negativity, I mean, there's a whole gamut, right? And everything is as unique as the individual and the individual's circumstances. But I want you to try to take this initiative and entertain me and my listening audience. For anybody that finds themselves going through a dark moment, they can't see the forest through the trees, right? They just know that with every turn, it's like a smack in the face, again, with more negativity. What do you want to say to them? How can they overcome these circumstances and build upon it?
I want to start with how things actually started in my life. The book will cover a lot more than I'm going to detail right now, but It started off with sexual abuse when I was a child of 5 years old.
Sorry.
And it was through family members who you trust in a lifetime. Yeah. And respected individuals. And so you don't think much of it during that because it's family related. So I lived with that, and that's how things started with my spiral in my life. From 5, I started with drinking at 8. I went to smoking around 8, and by 11 I was a full-fledged alcoholic and drug dealer. Through those situations, I found myself in relationships that would go nowhere. And all of this time that this was happening, I was attending a church that my parents did not attend, but my grandmother, who I seen in the summers, I would attend church with her and go to Bible schools. And I would learn things about God. So whenever I would go to this church on this bus, when I was with my parents, at the end of the service, there would be a song that was sang, and it would be an invitation to have Christ in your life. Mm-hmm. And I would go up every single time to just as I am, here I am, Lord, fix me, change me, do something with me, I'm a mess. And I did that for many, many years while I was young, but nothing seemed to change. As soon as I left the building, I was still that same person going through the struggles, and I began running away, and I was running away from everything. And what I didn't realize is I was actually running away from myself, but I was running away from God too. And I got into relationships that weren't any good. I struggled with same-sex relationships. Right or wrong, and I didn't want anyone to know about it because I didn't want to get killed, basically, in that time and age. There was a lot of other things that was happening that I couldn't fix or change. I went through life thinking it was all my fault, and it wasn't like I was being abused physically. I was manipulated, I would say. And I thought that everything that was happening to me was supposed to happen, because why would God allow it if it wasn't supposed to be? So I had a lot of learning to do, and I didn't have the patience to learn. I didn't want to learn anything. By this time, I didn't want to listen to anybody. I was a teenager, and I was a runaway, and grew up way too fast. I barely remember being a child. I enjoyed being with my friends more than I did doing anything else, and I always managed to find the friends that had the drugs and had the drinking and always the older crowd. I never fit in with anyone else, and that's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And that's how I lived for a long time. That was a hard life to go through, but God is good in all of it. Yeah. Even though I wasn't living for God, and even though my life wasn't perfect, and even though I struggled with all these addictions, God was with me, because I can see over the years the protection that he had on me. I just didn't know how to get to him how to stop what I was doing. I didn't know how. So what I did was just continue in what I knew. And I would get in trouble with the law. I would get disorderly conduct. I would go to jail, and I wouldn't stay there long, but I just long enough to know that is not what I wanted in life. I tried to get my parents' attention many different times. My mom and I didn't get along when I was younger, so if I tried to tell her anything, she would lash out at me, and I'm sure in her heart she didn't mean to. What I found out is she had a hard life herself and never dealt with it. Yeah. And that's what we do, We have a hard time, and then we never deal with it, and the next person down the line ends up getting some of our bluntness, or we don't listen to them. And I always promised I would never be like that being a mother. And one day I got to be a mother against all odds. Because of the drugs that I had done growing up, the doctors had already said to me that I would probably never have children, so don't get my hopes up too high. Wow. And my one dream was to have a child, and I already had him named. When I was 13, I already had his name, what his name would be, and I had a husband. I got married. I didn't know him very long. I don't advise it. But I had a beautiful son, and that was a miracle. Mm-hmm. And I thought, there is a God. There is a miracle. Because here he is. So I don't know how much more that I want to share with the book, but this is a good start of what you'll hear, or read, I should say. I believe it's out there where you can hear it also. I'm not sure. Working on that if it isn't. But God was there the whole time. Just the fact that he gave me hope when I had my son was big enough for me to know that God still existed. Yeah. Some way, somehow. Even though I wasn't changed, I wasn't perfect, but it beat the odds of what the doctor said. And I knew God had to do that.
Marilynne,
that's why recovery happens.
No, listen, Marilynne, thank you very much for all of that. And listen, there's a lot to unpack. But a follow-up that I want to go into, listen, first of all, you mentioned that you don't know how much more you want to go into. I think you've said enough pertaining to the book itself. And I know my listening audience is just like me, but people, listen, I'm at the edge of my seat. Okay, I'm hooked. This is something that I know already my mind is going wild with how beneficial I can see this being. Because here's the thing, people, this is why I love having authors that have written memoirs on our network. Because we understand through the obstacles and the adversity that we face in life, wisdom becomes developed, right? You may not like the experiences. You may not want to learn from them or go through them. But one way or another, listen, if you touch that burning stove, you're going to burn yourself. But you're going to realize, I'm not touching that stove again, right? And you learn from that wisdom. Well, here's the beautiful part. You can learn through Marilynne's experience and understand different paths and alleyways that you don't want to go down through her wisdom that she has acquired. So you don't need to make the same mistakes. I'm telling you, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. It's called Recovery Happens Through Christ. You got to add this book to your shelf and recognize the benefit that it truly can have on your life. Marilynne, a very wonderfully poignant moment that you had a little while ago, and something that I thought was remarkably refreshing is you talked about, God being there with you this entire time. So through all of the obstacles that you were facing and going through. Now at the time you didn't know that God was there. You admittedly said it yourself, like you were going to church, and you were asking for his help. You were pleading for him, but you weren't able to hear him in the moment. But years later, you recognize he was there. You just didn't know how to listen to his voice and how to recognize that. And the reason why I thought that point was so remarkable is because I know I can relate to that sentiment. And I know a lot of my listening audience members can as well. So I want to ask you, Marilynne, for a lot of us, man, listen, we'll go to church. We'll get down on our knees. We'll pray every day, and we talk directly to him. And I think so often, and speaking for myself, we often look for a very obvious voice to speak to us, right? We look for a very obvious sign to point to us, hey, I'm here, right? I am with you through this. And a lot of times that's not the way God represents himself. So I want to ask you, again, another way of paying it forward and offering some advice here for any listening audience members that find themselves in a similar situation where it's like, man, listen, I'm calling, and it doesn't seem like he's answering. How does one even recognize that God is there and is wanting to be in our lives and to help us?
That's a really good question, and for everybody it's going to be different.
Yeah.
God's not going to answer everybody the same way or in the same manner.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, God was talking to me through different people, as my grandmother, for instance. My grandmother was a Methodist, and I had an uncle that is a Methodist minister, and so I grew up kind of in the Methodist and Baptist, and one evening when I was very young, I was told by my grandmother that I was supposed to go into a doctor for hearing surgery when I was 2 years old, and she took me to a Pentecostal tent service, and I was healed immediately by that service, by her faith.
Wow.
So God touches us in different manners. It could be a grandmother praying, a mother praying, you praying, and maybe we don't see it right away. But that day, when I could hear her clearly for the first time, she knew it was God, and she made sure that I knew it was God, because nobody fixed that. Nobody fixed that. And I used to say to her, well, I can hear her really, really good, but I don't hear God. She says, honey, when God wants you to hear him and you want him bad enough, you will do anything to listen for him. And listen, because he wants to talk to you. God has a hard time with us sometimes when we want to do our own thing.
Yeah.
As he clearly says, he wants all of us. He's like a father, and this in my life would be a really different way of speaking of fathers, is God the Father. And I wasn't too fond of the Father, but God has taken care of me in ways that I can't even begin to. I mean, I'm writing another book on all of what he's done and the blessings that he's done, and all the encouragements that he's given me through the years, and how to know that it's God. You have peace.
Mm-hmm.
You know when you have peace. A lot of times I want to say something and maybe it's not the right thing to say in a setting of a group of people, and God will say to me, be still, know that I'm God. Just that simple. But to know God, to know it's God, you would have to read the Bible. You would have to go to church, a church that believes in God, who believes in Jesus Christ, who died for our sins and who rose again. That's what you would have to believe to hear God in your own lives.
Marilynne, listen, I know you're not looking for praise. I'm going to give it to you anyway. We're at the end of the interview now, and we have discussed so much, but people understand, and please rest assured, we have barely scratched the surface. There is so much left underneath the surface of the water that you just want to dive into. But I want to take a second here, Marilynne, and I want to thank you. Thank you for, of course, being here to discuss this book. Thank you for writing the book, but thank you for having the bravery and the courage to showcase this. Because listen, people, how many of us go through our lives, and y'all can't see me, but my hands are up. I'm going to be the first to put myself there and fall on that sword. But how often do we look ourselves in the mirror, and it's hard enough for us to acknowledge certain aspects of ourselves, acknowledge certain aspects and events of our lives that we would otherwise rather just sweep under the rug and forget that they ever happened. I know I do. I know there's plenty of times where I've been in that situation and, man, listen, I don't want to address it. I just want to let it go as much as humanly possible. But to take it a step further, to not only force yourself to acknowledge certain things, but then to construct this metaphorical or this literary window of sorts and to allow others to peer inside and see them as well, takes courage to a level that many of us have a difficult time doing. So as I mentioned, I know she's not looking for praise, but I'm going to give it because, damn it, this is something special. Marilynne, you are an absolute embodiment of a person of distinction. People, I'm going to say it one last time. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's every online book reseller. All you have to do is search Recovery Happens Through Christ by Marilynne Harrison, and you'll find it. While you're at it, make sure that you get the most contemporary version because this is a new edition. But you're going to want the most recent publication to really maximize everything that this gift, and when I say gift, I truly mean it, that this gift has to offer. And I don't know if you all caught it. I know I did. Amongst all the gems that Marilynne just released today, she also stated that she's working on another book. So make sure you check back in frequently and get that one the moment it's released, because this is something you want to add to your bookshelves. This is something you want to get as a gift for someone else to add to theirs. Head on over there today, pick up your books, and really maximize the resource that it truly is. Marilynne, this has been an absolute delight. Such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me with you today.